One of the most stable countries in the Middle East was invented over a single afternoon by a British politician as a consolation prize. The year was 1921. The politician was Winston Churchill, and the family he handed it to had just lost something far more precious: the guardianship of Mecca itself. The country is Jordan, a kingdom with almost no oil, almost no water, and difficult borders in nearly every direction. By every rule of this region, it should not exist. And yet, a century later, it has outlasted empires, wars, and nearly every rival. This is the story of the compromise nobody asked for and why it worked. To understand Jordan, forget the map. Start with the family, the Hashemites. They trace their lineage directly to the Prophet Muhammad, to his grandson Hussein. And for roughly 7 centuries, they held one of the most prestigious offices in the Islamic world, Sharifs of the Mecca, custodians of Islam's holiest city. Then came the First World War. The Ottoman Empire, which ruled the region, sided with Germany, and Britain saw an opportunity. In letters exchanged between 1915 and 1916, a British official promised the head of the family, Sharif Hussein of Mecca, something extraordinary: support for a vast, independent Arab kingdom. If the Arabs rose against Ottomans, in June 1916 they rose. The Arab Revolt, fought alongside a young British officer the world would come to know as Lawrence of Arabia. The Hashemites kept their side of the bargain. Britain did not. Because while those letters were being exchanged, Britain and France had already signed a secret treaty, Sykes-Picot, 1916, dividing the Arab lands between themselves. Then in 1917, Britain issued the Balfour Declaration, supporting a Jewish national home in Palestine. 3 promises, 3 different recipients, 1 region. After the war, Sharif Hussein's son Faisal was crowned the king of Syria in Damascus in 1920. He reigned for 4 months. France, holding the mandate for Syria, crushed his forces at Mycenae and expelled him. The great Arab kingdom the family had fought for had shrunk to nothing, and that is the moment an angry brother began marching north with armed men, the march that accidentally created Jordan. His name was Abdullah, Faisal's older brother. In late 1920, he moved north from the Hijaz into the territory east to the Jordan River, declaring he would restore his brother's throne in Damascus, by force if necessary. This put Britain in an impossible position. It could not allow an attack on French-held Syria. It also could not afford another war. Enter Winston Churchill, Britain's new colonial secretary, with T.E. Lawrence at his side as advisor. In March 1921, at the Cairo conference and then face-to-face in Jerusalem, Churchill offered Abdullah a deal: abandon the march on Damascus and instead rule the land you are standing on, the territory east of the river, carved out of the Palestine Mandate as its emir. The arrangement was meant to last 6 months. It has now lasted more than a century. Churchill reportedly boasted that he had created Transjordan with the stroke of a pen one Sunday afternoon in Cairo, a throwaway line about a decision that permanently redrew the Middle East. In 1946, that impoverished emirate became an independent kingdom, and Abdullah its first king. Then history delivered its cruelest twist. In 1924, a rival power rose from Central Arabia, Abdul Aziz ibn Saud. Within a year, his forces had conquered the Hijaz. The Hashemites, custodians of Mecca for some 700 years, lost the holy cities forever. The land they lost became Saudi Arabia. All the family had left were Britain's consolation prizes: Faisal ruling the new kingdom of Iraq, Abdullah ruling Transjordan, and here is what nobody at the time predicted. It was the lesser prize that endured. In 1958, Iraq's monarchy was destroyed in a military coup. The young King Faisal II was executed. Syria had been lost back in 1920. Of the 3 Hashemite thrones, only one survives today, the poorest one, the improbable one, Jordan. And survival was never guaranteed. In 1948, the first Arab-Israeli war, Jordan's army took the West Bank and East Jerusalem and annexed them, a move almost no country recognized. Then in 1951, King Abdullah was assassinated at the entrance of Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. Standing beside him was his 15-year-old grandson, Hussein. A bullet struck the boy and it deflected off a metal his grandfather is said to have insisted he wearing that very morning. 2 years later, that teenager was the king. Hussein would reign for 46 years, surviving what is commonly counted as a dozen assassination attempts. In 1967, he lost the West Bank and Jerusalem to Israel in 6 days. And in 1970, the Palestinian armed factions inside Jordan grew powerful enough to challenge the throne itself. In Black September, the Jordanian army fought and expelled the PLO in a brief, bloody civil war. The PLO's fighters relocated to Lebanon. Remember that detail. It sets up everything that happened in Beirut afterwards. In 1994, Hussein signed a peace treaty with Israel, only the second Arab state ever to do so. It remains deeply unpopular with much of its own population, a majority of whom, by many estimates, are of Palestinian origin. But buried in that treaty is a remarkable clause. It recognizes Jordan's special role regarding the Muslim holy sites of Jerusalem. The family that lost Mecca still holds a form of custodianship over Al-Aqsa. Today, Jordan has no oil. It is one of the most water-scarce countries on earth. It hosts millions of refugees and it sits surrounded by the wars of 2026, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, the Israel-Iran conflict. Its airspace at times a corridor and at times a target for other people's missiles, and still it holds. The compromise nobody asked for has outlasted almost everything drawn on the map beside it. So, how was Jordan created? By accident, ambition, and afternoon diplomacy. A consolation prize that became the region's great survivor. The real question isn't why Jordan was created. It's why, of everything drawn on the map in those years, this is the state that worked. And one thread of this story leads straight to another, the PLO. The PLO fighters expelled in Black September went to Lebanon, where their arrival helped ignite a civil war. And out of that war rose the organization that I will cover in my next video, Hezbollah.